Hi, it's Michelle from Movement Lesson, and we're continuing the class on buoyancy. A little bit of the swallow class, a little bit of nasal breathing, all of those kind of images come to when you're working with the head and buoyancy. Now, I purposely have his head a little bit off the table just to suggest an abnormal head positioning when a child starts getting a flat head or is starting to, again, I just did a video review on this on the practitioner's site, when they're tending to anchoring or pressing the head into the ground versus being able to have that weight transfer. Now, when the head starts to misshape, there's several things that happen that go on. First of all, it changes the soft spot. So when you're going to sit up, I believe the soft spot doesn't close before the sitting up. That's why sitting up is supposed to happen around 6.5 to 7 months, because it's almost like an air bubble rising. The skull is not as heavy. But when a child starts to become delayed, and now we're at 8, 9, 10 months into sitting up, now I've got to lift my head off the ground versus using a lot more of my principles of buoyancies, which I should have picked up at an earlier date. Another thing that I'm looking at here is, again, if you just were to look at where an invisible line of where the palate is. So if his head, let's say, was more upright, you see that? Then his palate or the mouth line would be perpendicular to the floor. So what's happening here, and it's just subtle, we now have an abnormality and it's going backwards instead of going down. That doesn't mean you prop your child on a pillow, but yes, if you see lots of kids too, they'll start to learn, let's say, sitting up from an angled position, and then we slowly bring them down to the floor. And there's a lot of methods that teach that for people that have flexibility issues, is they raise the floor and then slowly bring it down so your body can adjust to come to the floor, let's say flat-handed. The first thing that I want to work on, and this will be the first video, is the weight transfer. It does not look like I'm even doing anything to his head, but I talk about the scooping water. You don't grab water, you scoop. So thumbs off the head. So you use these fingers more, and I'm just looking to, in my mind's eye, if anything, just if I pretend, let's say his head was filled with marbles down here, which they might be, but just for visualization, and I'm slowly trying to bring, let's say, that marble or balls down to the other end. Now, you'll know, again, weight transfer issues, heavy head. If I have to think about lifting this head, I need to keep the head on the ground until the head can start to weight transfer. So this is where, these are my talents. I have a very, very delicate touch. And he knows my touch, so now he's really going into play with it. But again, I'm not looking to lift his head up. Nose crossing midline, let's say. Midline this way is here. I want the nose to cross, the palate to cross midline vertically. Or to, let's say, head to feet versus ear to ear. So this is an ear to ear, but still the palate hangs back. The palate hangs back. The uvula hangs back. For those of you doing the swallow series, and more of that, way more of that is on my course series, but that uvula hanging back, that's where the swallowing, the breathing become very compromised, because the palate itself can't counter, and the palate strike to decide nasal breathing or swallowing. That goes into the video review that I just did for the kiddos that looks like ATNR but have swallowing issues. I'm going to say this 1,000 times. Let me tell you, you cannot do this lesson enough. Your child's going to sleep. Your husband's going to sleep. This is a wonderful lesson. It really brings the system back home. Now, what I'm starting to do in my mind's eyes, just like I talk about testing the legs of wine, or as you're starting to slosh and watch that sugar cling to the glass from your wine, I'm just looking to coat the back of the nasal. Now again, the more and more that the head goes like this, the more and more now the mucus is pouring down into the behind the eyes. This is where we have issues with binocular vision and visual abnormalities that start to show up just because of the pressure of the mucus that you'll have, versus here when the mucus can drain away from the eyes and the eyes can be more free flowing. This is a situation that I had with my son. Now, just quickly, for those of you that are doing the laser, you're doing the same lesson. You're just bringing the laser in. Now, I would bring it right here, let's say to the head, base of the head. You can also bring to the neck. I'm going to put this on the other side, just so you can see my hands. So the same lesson, and you can even see now, I can start to weight transfer a bit quicker than I could without using the lasers. That's why I like using the lasers. They just put me into a much more receptive mode with the system. So I can start working here with that weight transfer. Versus again, I'm going to just take the laser away. See, again, I can't get that shift as nicely with the palette. Now it is already starting to improve and his head is getting, quote, lighter. And so, like I said, it just gives me that boost that I need. There we go. So this is without the laser. But that laser just, like I said, enhances the technique that I'm using with movement lessons, so it gets me further. The head is still coming back. You want to, now that I had my hand underneath, and again, still not, quote, lifting, I go back to that first kind of movement, that first lesson. And I'll see you in the next video.